Hello everyone, and welcome back to UK Homicide. Today's case is that of Ellie Edwards, who was a completely innocent bystander when she was shot on Christmas Eve, 2022. Who could do such a reckless and senseless act against someone described as the most beautiful and bright star? We will look at the sequence of events, what led to the murder, the police investigation, and finally, Ellie's legacy. For ad-free listening, please subscribe to Apple Podcasts. To maintain privacy, I will refer to people outside the family and trial by their initials. Ellie Edwards was born to parents Tim and Gaynor on September 27, 1996. She had a younger sister named Lucy, who described Ellie as her best friend, sidekick, and soulmate. The family lived in the coastal area of New Brighton, which has a population of 14,800 people and is situated on the Wirral, Merseyside, in the UK. At the time of her murder, Ellie was working as a dental assistant and beautician at Nova Studio, a salon on the Wirral. Her father, Tim, is a professional photographer who, since Ellie's death, turned to activism against gun violence, participating in walks and events to raise awareness. Her mother, Gaynor, has supported these advocacy efforts, attending community gatherings and services in Ellie's memory. Ellie had spent the day before the shooting with her family, celebrating Christmas at local markets and her father's home in New Brighton. The drive between her house and the pub where the shooting happened is only a short distance, 10 to 15 minutes by car. Around 3 hours before the incident, a stolen Mercedes with a single occupant was backed into a space in the Lighthouse pub car park. Just before midnight, at 11:47 p.m., someone opened fire on a group standing outside the pub with an illegal Scorpion submachine gun. Ellie was shot twice in the back of the head and died on the scene. HL, LC, and NS, who were also innocent bystanders, sustained non-fatal gunshot injuries. The other two woundings were that of Jake Duffy and Kieran Salkeld. These two were subsequently identified as the intended targets, with the motivation being a gang-related feud. Duffy and Salkeld had viciously kicked, punched, and stamped on a gang member in Rockferry the day before the murder. As a side note to Ellie's case, Duffy and Salkeld were convicted on February 20, 2023 of this attack and were sentenced to 36 and 33 months, respectively. The Ring camera video of this attack is terrible, but I will add a link to it in the description should you wish to see. I will also include a link to the pub shooting CCTV and people leaving in the aftermath. On Christmas Day, news outlets captured Ellie's friends and family at the scene. Following the tragic murder of Ellie, several press conferences were held by Merseyside police to provide updates and appeal for public assistance. Shortly after the shooting, Detective Superintendent Sue Coombs of Merseyside Police held a press conference urging anyone with information to come forward. She detailed the ongoing investigation and encouraged witnesses or those with CCTV or dashcam footage to provide evidence. One of the most impactful moments was DS Coombs reading Ellie's dad, Tim, words about the devastating loss of his daughter.
Hello, first of all, I'm going to read a statement on behalf of Ellie's family. There was no one as beautiful as our Ellie Mae. Her looks, her laugh, and the way she would light up a room as she walked in. She had this way about her that as soon as you met her, you instantly fell in love with her. Everyone that knew and met Elle knew how special she was. Her laugh was infectious. Anyone who was around her had a good time. She loved life and had so many amazing plans for the future. She was only just getting started. Christmas and our family will never be the same again without her. She was the glue that held this big family together. We will love and miss her forever. Our Ellie Mae, the most beautiful and bright star out there, forever and always. My beautiful Ellie Marlene is the love of my life, and she is my world, my best friend. She will always shine and be beautiful and bright. My Ellie has never gone. Ellie's family are understandably devastated by her shocking and needless death. They need answers, and now it's more important than ever that people come forward and tell us what they know. While I understand how worrying incidents such as this are, I want to reassure people that my investigation team is working round the clock to get justice for Ellie and her family. We've already spoken to a large number of witnesses and reviewed a vast amount of CCTV footage, and we are pursuing a number of lines of inquiry still. We are committed to finding the persons responsible for Ellie's death and putting them behind bars. These people don't deserve to be walking our streets. They don't deserve to be protected. They belong in prison. Guns have no place on the streets of Merseyside, and we're dedicated to getting weapons off the streets. Silence is never an option. We need people to take a stand against criminals. We need you to speak to us so that we can take action. Let us know who is carrying and storing weapons and let us do the rest. We know that the answers to this lie within our communities. So my appeal to you is please tell us what you know and help us get justice for Ellie's family.
The suspects. Police identified Connor Chapman and Thomas Waring's involvement in Ellie Edwards' murder through a combination of CCTV footage, forensic evidence, and witness testimonies. Chapman was caught on CCTV arriving at the Lighthouse pub in a stolen black Mercedes A-Class and waiting for hours before firing at the group outside, aiming for rival gang members. After the shooting, Chapman fled in the exact vehicle, driving to Waring's house on Private Drive, Barnston, where footage showed him dropping off the Scorpion submachine gun used in the attack. Forensic analysis later matched Chapman's DNA to a bullet casing at the shooting scene, and phone records connected both men to the events after the crime. On New Year's Eve, according to cell phone data, Chapman and Waring attempted to destroy evidence by burning the stolen Mercedes in Frodsham. This car was recovered by police the next day. Chapman was tracked to a holiday home in Newton, Wales, and arrested on January 10, 2023. Waring was arrested on March 8, 2023, at his home in Barnston on charges of possessing a prohibited weapon and assisting an offender. The trial. During their trial at Liverpool Crown Court, Chapman and Waring were defended by separate legal teams. Barrister Mark Ryan KC led Chapman's defense, and William England KC led Waring's. Chapman denied being the shooter, claiming he was at home on Christmas Eve and didn't leave after returning from a shopping trip. Despite CCTV footage showing someone resembling him driving the stolen Mercedes and later discarding a gun at Waring's residence, Chapman insisted he wasn't the individual caught on tape and had no involvement in the shooting. Chapman also suggested Waring had reasons to implicate him, possibly to reduce his own sentence. His defense argued that although he had previously driven the stolen Mercedes used during the shooting, he was not present at the time of the attack. Chapman claimed he was at his girlfriend's house when the shooting occurred. Despite the overwhelming evidence to the contrary, namely CCTV footage, DNA evidence, and ballistics, the jury was also told that Chapman was affiliated with a gang from the Woodchurch estate. His intended targets, Jake Duffy and Kieran Salkeld, who were shot at the same time as Ellie, were connected to a rival group from the Ford estate. These two groups had been engaged in ongoing disputes, fueled by issues such as territorial dominance and drug-related activities, as well as the assault we talked about earlier. Waring acknowledged that Chapman visited his home after the shooting, but denied involvement in disposing of the gun or the Mercedes used in the crime. England's defense emphasized the lack of direct evidence proving Waring had assisted Chapman with the weapon or the car disposal. The jury was told that Ellie had sustained fatal injuries from 2 gunshots to the back left side of her head. One bullet traveled through her skull, exiting just above her right eye, while the other lodged within the skull. During the trial, prosecutors highlighted the victim's impact statements and the devastating loss suffered by the family. The family expressed their deep grief and pain, emphasizing that Ellie was an innocent victim caught in a gang feud, which made her death even more tragic. The trial concluded with the jury deliberating for only 3 hours and 48 minutes before finding both Chapman and Waring guilty on all counts. On July 6, 2023, Chapman received a life sentence with a minimum of 48 years, while Waring was sentenced to 9 years for assisting an offender in firearm possession. The whole sentence is 15 minutes long. I will only play a portion of it, but I'll link the full video in the description below.
I sentence you as follows. On count 1 to imprisonment for life with a minimum term to serve in custody of 48 years, less 176 days served on remand. On counts 2 and 3, concurrent sentences of imprisonment for life under Section 285 of the Sentencing Act 2020 with a minimum term of 22 years. On counts 4 and 5, concurrent sentences of 7 years imprisonment. On count 6, a concurrent sentence of 18 months imprisonment. On count 7 and 8, a concurrent sentence of 15 years. And for the offence of handling stolen goods, a concurrent sentence of 3 years imprisonment. He can go down.
Ellie's dad has this to say.
Well, we got the result we wanted. Justice for Ellie. So it's always been about. Those two cowards in there decided to drag it out for 4 weeks, put all these people through that, and everyone else around it involved in the case. Can't thank the police enough for what they did, and we got there in the end, and the right results. And you know what? I hope them two never see another Christmas again ever in their lives.
Chapman tried to hide from you in the dock. He tried to keep his head so that he couldn't see you.
I've had my eyes on him for 4 weeks, 3 weeks, 4, however long it's been, and he has not looked at me once because he's a coward, and that's exactly what he is. And I couldn't care less about him. I'll never ever mention his name, and I hope he rots in hell.
How much of a relief is this for you, Tim? I've spoken to you for the last 6 months, ever since this happened. How much of a relief personally is this?
It's a big relief because now we can start again. We've been put through hell, and we deserve now to be given the life back that we had before, which will never be the same. And we can it's now a new chapter. It's a new beginning for our family.
Big day.
Big day indeed, yeah. It's the worst day, but the best of the worst day.
Following the convictions, a police statement highlighted the success of the investigation and the justice achieved for Ellie's family. Apologies for the sound of the gulls in this clip. It was not possible to edit them out.
Connor Chapman has today been jailed for life for the senseless and tragic murder of Ellie Edwards in Wirral on Christmas Eve last year. Ellie was a young woman with her whole life ahead of her who was simply enjoying a night out in a pub with her family and friends. The cowardly actions of Chapman on that night, firing at his intended targets whilst they were stood outside in a crowd, shows the arrogance and contempt that he had for everybody else. As a result of his reckless actions, Ellie had her life tragically cut short. Her family and friends and everyone who knew her have been left devastated by their loss. Today, Chapman is behind bars where he rightly belongs and where he will now spend a considerable period of his adult life. His co-accused, Thomas Waring, has also been brought to justice. No sentence, however long, can change what Chapman did, but I hope that knowing he has been brought to justice and is off our streets brings some small amount of comfort. I hope that it serves as a deterrent to anybody considering picking up or using a gun. I would like to take this opportunity to pay tribute to Ellie's family, who throughout the whole investigation and the trial have remained dignified and composed, despite being forced to relive the horrific events of Christmas Eve. And I hope that they can now start to properly grieve their loss.
Ellie's funeral took place on January 25, 2023, at St. Nicholas Church in Wallasey. The service was attended by hundreds of mourners, including family and friends who arrived dressed in black, with some carrying flowers. The funeral procession featured a hearse with a floral tribute spelling Ellie May. Her coffin was brought to the church on a horse-drawn carriage led by 4 white horses. Tim was among the pallbearers carrying the coffin adorned with a floral arrangement. During the service, Reverend Jeff Staples delivered a heartfelt message, urging mourners to leave with hope in their hearts, emphasizing the goodness seen in those who supported and comforted each other after the tragedy. Attendees tied ribbons on the church's prayer tree to symbolize remembrance. Lighthouse Pub, where the incident occurred, remained closed on the day of her funeral as a mark of respect. Let's recap the critical events timeline. December 23, 2022, Chapman and Salkeld attack a man in Rock Ferry. This video link is in the description below. December 24th, 2022. 9 p.m. Connor Chapman arrives in a stolen black Mercedes A-Class at the Lighthouse Pub in Wallasey. He remains in the area, lying in wait for his intended targets. 11:47 p.m. Ellie Edwards steps outside the pub for a cigarette with a group, which includes the intended targets, Jake Duffy and Kieran Salkeld, who were from a rival gang. Shortly before midnight, Chapman exits the car, rounds the corner, and opens fire with a Scorpion submachine gun, spraying bullets at the group standing outside the pub. Ellie Edwards, an innocent bystander, is fatally struck twice in the head. 5 other individuals are injured. Video in description below. Moments later, Chapman flees the scene in the Mercedes and drives to the home of his associate, Thomas Waring, where he leaves the weapon. CCTV footage captures Chapman's arrival at Waring's residence. December 31st, 2022, Chapman and Waring meet to destroy evidence by burning the stolen Mercedes in Frodsham, Cheshire. January 10th, 2023, Chapman is arrested at a holiday home in Wales, where he had been hiding with the help of associates. Waring is later arrested on January 26th and charged with aiding Chapman in covering up the crime. February 20th, 2023, Duffy and Salkeld are convicted of an unprovoked attack the day before Ellie was shot. This attack is believed to have been the reason for the Christmas Eve pub shooting by Chapman. March 8th, 2023. Waring is arrested at his home in Barnston on charges of possessing a prohibited weapon and assisting an offender. July 6, 2023. After a 3.5-week trial, Connor Chapman is found guilty of Ellie Edwards' murder, 2 counts of attempted murder, and other related charges. He is sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 48 years. Waring is sentenced to 9 years for assisting an offender and possession of a prohibited weapon. Could this have been prevented? The murder of Ellie Edwards raises questions about whether the tragedy could have been prevented, given the context of ongoing gang violence and existing legal measures. There are several points we need to consider. Firstly, gang injunctions and pre-existing feuds. Connor Chapman had been the subject of gang injunctions intended to restrict their movements and interactions. In particular, he was known to be part of a feud involving rival gangs from the Woodchurch and Ford estates, which are geographically separated by the M53 motorway. These legal injunctions failed to prevent the escalation in violence, highlighting gaps in enforcing restrictions or monitoring compliance. Secondly, lack of targeted interventions. Merseyside had seen growing gang violence driven by territorial disputes, drugs, and retribution. More profound and proactive measures aimed at the root causes of gang culture, like better community outreach, targeted law enforcement, and rehabilitation programs, might have removed indiscriminate violence in environments like that of the Lighthouse Pub. Thirdly, firearm acquisition and usage. Chapman's possession of a Scorpion submachine gun highlights a broader issue of illegal firearms circulating within criminal networks. Tighter controls, intelligence sharing between police forces, and more aggressive tracking of firearm supplies might have reduced the chances of a weapon falling into the hands of gang members. And lastly, response and community involvement. Following the shooting, police and community leaders appealed to the public for cooperation and information. While authorities managed to collect extensive evidence, earlier intervention by community members or witnesses could have potentially alerted law enforcement to brewing violence, as echoed by local appeals after the incident. In summary, while legal measures like gang injunctions were in place, more robust enforcement, community engagement, and broader initiatives targeting gang culture and illegal firearms could have helped in preventing this tragedy. Ellie's legacy. Ellie Edwards' legacy is rooted in her family's efforts to combat gun violence following her tragic death. In her memory, her father, Tim Edwards, established the Ellie Edwards Foundation, which focuses on raising awareness about gun crime and supporting initiatives to prevent similar tragedies. It achieved official charity status in March 2024. The foundation aims to create positive change and honor Ellie's legacy through empowerment initiatives. Tim has also embarked on significant fundraising efforts to support the foundation's goal, including endurance challenges. Ellie is remembered as a bright and caring young woman, whose life was cut short by senseless violence. Her family and community continue to honor her by advocating for peace and safety, aiming to end the cycle of gang-related violence in Merseyside. This case is dedicated to Ellie Edwards, who was born September 27, 1996, and died December 24, 2022, at the age of 26. Thank you for listening and taking the time to remember Ellie and her family and the search for justice and a positive legacy. Take care, stay safe, and look out for each other. Until next time, bye.